He fed them. He bathed them, or made them bathe themselves. For days, sometimes weeks, he kept them alive, clean, cared for, like a man playing house with a child he'd stolen. And then, without warning, he killed them and left their bodies in public, out in the open, on the side of a road, in a snowbank, in a parking lot, as if he wanted them found, as if he wanted credit. Between 1976 and 1977, in the wealthy tree-lined suburbs of Oakland County, Michigan, 4 children were taken this way. 2 boys, 2 girls, all of them last seen within a mile of the same road, all of them abducted on days it was snowing. The man who took them was never caught. Investigators believe he may still be alive. Oakland County in the mid-1970s was the version of America people moved to the suburbs for. Leafy streets, good schools, a sense that nothing bad happened here. Kids walked to the corner store alone. Parents didn't think twice. That's what made what happened next so devastating. The killer didn't have to break into anyone's life. The neighborhood handed him its children. Mark Stebbins was 12 years old, walking home from an American Legion Hall in Ferndale on the afternoon of February 15, 1976. He called his mother around 1:30 to tell her he was on his way. He never arrived. 4 days later, his body was found in a parking lot in Southfield, not hidden, not buried, but placed, almost displayed. He had been sexually assaulted and suffocated. Investigators noted rope burns on his wrists and ankles. He had been someone's captive before he was anyone's victim. For 10 months, nothing. Detectives in Ferndale treated it as an isolated tragedy, a single, terrible crime with no connection to anything else. Parents in the surrounding suburbs went back to letting their kids walk to school, to the store, to a friend's house a few blocks over. The illusion of safety, so central to why families had moved to Oakland County in the first place, held for a little while longer. It wouldn't survive the next 3 killings. Then, 4 days before Christmas, 1976, 12-year-old Jill Robinson left her parents' house in Royal Oak after an argument with her mother. She never planned to run far. She never came home at all. Her body was found on the shoulder of Highway 75. She'd been shot in the face with a shotgun, a method of killing so different from Stebbins's that for a while, police didn't connect the cases. It would take 2 more children before they were certain they were hunting one man. 13 days into the new year, 10-year-old Kristine Mihelich walked into a 7-Eleven in Berkeley to buy a magazine. She was abducted from the parking lot. Unlike Stebbins and Robinson, Kristine wasn't found within days. She was kept alive for 19 days, nearly 3 weeks, fed, clothed, cared for in some grotesque parody of protection before she was finally killed and left in a snow-covered field in Franklin. 19 days is long enough for a family to let themselves hope, long enough for her parents to keep her bedroom exactly as she'd left it, to answer every knock at the door expecting news, to imagine, because the alternative was unbearable, that whoever had her might still let her go. Somewhere during those 19 days, the killer fed her, kept her warm, gave her clean clothes, and then he ended her life anyway and drove her body out to a snow-covered field like it was nothing. She wasn't found breathing. She was found 19 days after she vanished, and by then, Oakland County no longer believed these were separate crimes. The task force that had been quietly forming since Jill Robinson's murder went public. So did the fear. The 4th and final victim was 11-year-old Timothy King. On March 16, 1977, he walked to a pharmacy in Birmingham to buy a pack of candy. Witnesses saw him talking to a man near a car in the parking lot, the best description police would ever get of a suspect. He never made it home. His father, Barry King, a young attorney at the time, spent the following days doing something almost unbearable to imagine, sitting by the phone, waiting for a ransom call from a kidnapper who had no intention of ever asking for money. Tim's body was found 6 days later in a drainage ditch. He had been sexually assaulted and suffocated, just like Mark Stebbins, the boy who died more than a year earlier, a mile from the same road. Investigators found threads holding all 4 cases together that were too specific to be coincidence. Every child was last seen within a mile of Woodward Avenue, the main artery running through Oakland County suburbs. Every abduction happened on a day it was snowing. Every victim was fed and either bathed or made to bathe before death. The killer wanted them clean when he was done with them. The boys were sexually assaulted, the girls were not, a distinction that has never fully been explained. And every body was left somewhere it was likely to be found quickly, not hidden, as if the killer needed the discovery as much as the crime itself. The investigation that followed became the largest of its kind in American history up to that point. Dozens of detectives from multiple jurisdictions were pulled onto a single task force. An FBI agent was flown in to brief local police on the psychology of pedophiles, what to look for, how they behaved, how they gained a child's trust in the 90 seconds it takes to pull up alongside a kid walking home. Tip lines rang around the clock. A state that had once let its children roam free now watched every stranger, every van, every man loitering near a school with a suspicion that would take a generation to fade. The thousands of leads were logged, thousands went nowhere. And still, in the end, nothing. No arrest, no trial, no name released to the public with any certainty. But there was a name investigators kept coming back to, quietly, for decades: Christopher Busch. Busch was the son of a General Motors executive, a man with prior convictions involving child sexual abuse, who had been sentenced to nothing more than probation again and again by a system that failed every child who came after him. He had ties to a network of men later linked to a child pornography and abuse ring operating out of a hunting lodge in northern Michigan. A ring investigators believe may have had direct connections to at least one of the Oakland County victims. In late January 1977, weeks before Timothy King's murder, Busch was actually arrested and questioned in connection with the case. He was released. Christopher Busch died in 1978 in what was ruled a suicide inside his family's Bloomfield Township home, before he could ever be charged with anything connected to the 4 murders. Decades later, one of the men connected to that same abuse network, Gregory Green, a man with his own history of pedophile convictions out of California, allegedly told investigators under interrogation that Busch had confessed to killing Mark Stebbins, the very first victim, the one who started it all. Green claimed Busch had learned about Timothy King through him months before King ever walked into that Birmingham pharmacy to buy candy. If true, it means the man responsible for at least one of these murders was in police custody in January 1977, arrested, questioned, and released, weeks before the 4th and final child was taken and killed. It means Timothy King's abduction might have been preventable. It means investigators may have had the Oakland County Child Killer in an interrogation room and let him walk back out into the world. No charges were ever filed against Busch or Green in connection with the murders. No court ever tested Green's claim, and Busch, dead for decades, was never able to answer for it. The Oakland County Child Killer case remains officially open, a live investigation into a monster with a face investigators believe they may already know, sitting in files that have never produced enough evidence to convict anyone, living or dead. Timothy King's older sister, Kathy, was a teenager when her brother disappeared. She has spent nearly 50 years watching every development in the case reopen the same wound. That's the part true crime rarely captures honestly, that for the people who lived it, the case never actually goes cold. It just goes quiet, punctuated every few years by a new lead, a new name, a new hope that dies the same way the old ones did. 4 children, 13 months. A killer who fed them before he suffocated them, bathed them before he dumped them somewhere he knew they'd be found, as if being caught, being seen, was always part of the plan. He was never caught. He may have died decades ago, ruled a suicide in a house in Bloomfield Township, taking his confession with him. Or he may still be out there, an old man now, walking streets that have long since forgotten what he did to them. In recent years, investigators exhumed remains believed to belong to Busch and ran new DNA testing, chasing forensic technology that didn't exist in 1977. Results have been described as inconclusive or simply never made fully public, one more thread in a case that has spent 50 years offering families just enough to keep hoping, never quite enough to close the file. Michigan State Police still take tips on this case today. The families are old now, or gone. Barry King, who once sat by a phone waiting for a ransom demand that would never come, spent the rest of his life as one of the case's fiercest advocates, refusing to let his son become a statistic. Half a century later, somebody, somewhere, still knows exactly what happened on those 4 days it snowed, and exactly why a task force the size of a small army was never enough to stop it in time.